Today we're going to be studying Esther. We love Esther. She is an incredible woman. I just want to say one thing right up front. Never in this book is God specifically mentioned. That's one of our points we bring out in the questions at the end. Is God present? Only one of two books, again, remember, named after a woman. Before we studied before Ruth, Esther is the other book that's named after a woman. But I want to stop us for a minute, because Esther, and the Hebrew name for Esther is Hadassah. Now, they wouldn't have used this, because if when she went into King Xerxes and said, "My name is Hadassah," he probably would have known she was Hebrew. And remember, in the beginning, she hid that. But I want to bring out these names because Hadassah means myrtle, a myrtle bush, which is a beautiful, beautiful bush, but it is planted on earth. And Esther is the Greek word for, it means star, a star way up in the heavens. Now, I was reading this week, I love the Book of Mysteries by Jonathan Cahn, and I was reading about these two names, and he said she was a woman who was planted, a beautiful woman, a myrtle, planted on this earth for a reason, because her reason became that she was a star over all her people, planted but over all of them. Beautiful, a beauty in heaven, but for a reason. So that, let's remember that there are two names to this woman. They don't mean the same thing, but they come together beautifully in what she did for her people, the Jewish people, who we're going to see were under huge attack. Now, we said God is never mentioned. But the question I want to ask you today, actually a couple, and you may be here. Are you in a situation that you do not understand? Are you asking, maybe even a little further than not understanding, what is my purpose? My purpose in this situation? My purpose in life? And that brings me to the last question. Does my life even matter? Oh, if you're asking that, I want you to know I've been there. I've been so low some days that I've just thought, would anybody even know if I just died today? I'm here to tell you that you really do matter. And we're going to see how this young girl mattered. And I want you to hang on today if you don't think you matter. Because you do. You matter to him. You matter to me. You matter to the ones who love you. So here we go. First, I want you to see, how did she start out? She started out as a little girl. Both of her parents died. What did that make her? That made her an orphan. That put her in a very vulnerable category. One to be poor, one to be discarded. What does James say about widows and orphans? True religion is to help them. She needed help. I work, ladies, with a lot of foster children whose parents are gone for whatever reason. They're abandoned. One of the worst things that you can do to a child is to abandon that child. And she was abandoned, so that as a little girl, she was probably thinking, fearful, and does my life even matter? Both of my parents are gone. She started off fearful, so that then at that point, she was adopted by her, some say uncle, some say cousin, Mordecai. And he took her in and he raised her as his daughter. So she was adopted. She was part of a family. The word that comes through to me for this woman is obedience. She was 100% obedient. And I want to show you the areas before we get into it. First, completely obedient to her uncle. Completely. In a bit, she's going to be completely obedient to her husband, who was the king. Completely obedient. She was completely obedient when called to help her Jewish people, knowing she could die if she did that. But in the end, she was true to herself, but she was completely obedient to her God. And how do I know that she believed in him? She called her uncle and everybody else to fast and pray. Fasting was something that was developed years earlier. When people wanted an answer from God, they fasted. Today, still people do fast. So this was obedient. She was brilliant. She was beautiful. She was brave, but she was obedient. And if I had to assign one word to this myrtle, this star, it's complete obedience. So what happened was Haman, which to me sounds an awful like Satan, didn't like Mordecai because Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him. He found out Mordecai was a Jew. And so Haman, who was just despicable, said, I know how I'll get him. I'll just not take him down. I'm going to destroy all the Jewish people. So he goes to the king, and the king is probably again in rare form, and he says to the king, let's issue an edict that on this day, the 13th day of the 12th month, that anybody in our kingdom can destroy any Jew they want to. And you know what we can do then? We can go and we can raid all their treasuries, and we can raid and steal all their things, and we'll bring them back, and I'll line our treasury so you'll be even richer, king. The king, who we've known is easily swayed, said, good idea. Mordecai finds out about it, and he realizes that his people are going to be destroyed. And I want you to, he tears his clothes and he's mourning, and Esther finds out about it and says, ask him what's wrong. Ask him, why is he doing this? And this is what comes back, that he tells her this beautiful speech. You must speak up is basically what he's saying. He says, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. He's not concerned that at some point the Jews will be delivered. They always are in history. God preserves a remnant. I believe Mordecai believes in that God. That's what he's saying here. But he says, but you and your, what does he say? Your father's family will perish. He's taken her back to who she is. I'm your adopted father, but your earthly father and mother have a family, and you're all going to perish. And then he says to her, but who knows that you have come to this royal position? Remember, she was taken into the harem, but she was chosen as the queen. To this royal position, or to where you are today, ladies, that you have come to this position as an employee, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a church member. You've come to this position for such a time as this. I can't fill in what you're dealing with, but I have had for such a time as this. Stand firm. Know that you've been called. Know that you need to stay and fight. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. Remember a few weeks ago, instead of giving an excuse and saying, but God, I can't, Mordecai saying to Esther, but with God, you can. You can stand firm. In this royal position, you have been put there for such a time as this. She then says to him, go and tell my people, fast for 3 days, and then I will go to him. If he doesn't extend the golden scepter to her, she can be murdered on the spot. But she says, if I perish, I perish. She's convicted to be obedient, to do for Mordecai what is being asked, to do for her people what is being asked. She has a banquet. She has a second banquet. And only then does she say to her king, hear my request. If it was only for me, she says, I wouldn't make that request. Remove me from the equation. But I'm doing this for a lot of people who I love. Oh, do I go to my knees for my family, for my children, for my grandchildren, for my dear friends? It's not just for us. Today I've been in a lot of prayer for a group that are being hit by a huge hurricane. For such a time as this, we need to kneel for them. We need to pray for them. We need to stand for them. And she stays and she fights. The king does accept it. He gives her a request, but because one edict has been issued, he issues a second edict that says the Jews can defend themselves. Jews in a foreign country, they're still in Babylon. He gives them permission to defend themselves. Haman is killed on the gallows that he's built for Mordecai. All his 10 sons are killed. The Jews defend themselves. And that holiday that's established as a result of that is called Purim, Purim, or lots, in honor of this obedient and brave star who went to bat for her people. I want to leave you with a scripture today. It's one of my favorites, but it was brought to me by a dear man who's paralyzed on one side. And he says this is his favorite scripture because he does so much. Even though he's paralyzed, he does Special Olympics and he does the shot put and he does the javelin with just one hand, handicapped. And this is his scripture. Now to him is able to do immeasurably more than all that we can imagine according to his power at work in us. Would anybody have thought that, but because I'm so in love with my foster kids, that a little foster girl could have saved her people from extinction for such a time as this? Would she have thought, if she had known the scripture, that how God could do immeasurably more through her? Probably not. But it was according to his power and his work through her that happened. Are you asking yourself, does your life matter today? I'm going to claim over you that he who is able to do immeasurably more through you will do that according to his power that's working through you. Claim that today. Claim Ephesians 3:20. I've claimed it many times, knowing that he gave this scripture to us because he loves you so much, and I do too.